Welcome to episode 136 of The Tweem Show. This is your host Sajid Islam, and today I'll be going over the notable news and updates in the digital marketing space from the week of November 21 through 25. November 24th was Thanksgiving Day. November 25th was Black Friday, so not really much has happened this week. However, there are a few updates that I've thought I should share with you all since it pertains to the digital marketing world. Also, hope you all had a good Thanksgiving. With that, let's jump right in. First of all, Google has introduced a new policy, Circumvention. What this basically means that Google obviously has this spam policy, right? Spam policy says that you cannot do a lot of things that is detrimental to Google search ecosystem, things like that. Now, a lot of people, what they do is they try to circumvent that policy, the overall overarching spam policy, by things like creating new website, creating new third-party sites, and then just to play around. There are bad apples everywhere. So now Google has actually announced this policy, circumvention policy, which basically says that if you engage in any actions intended to bypass Google's spam or content policies for Google search, or you want to undermine restrictions placed on content site or an account, then basically Google reserves the right to de-rank you, delist you, remove you from the search index. Now you could say, hey Sajid, why are they doing it? Do they really need to spell it out? Well, from a legality standpoint, they need to make it clear, saying that this is the rule, because in the absence of a clear rule, people will do things and then they're gonna kind of raise a hand and say, hey, I didn't know this, or I didn't know you're gonna do this. Oh, hey, you did this is bad, Google is bad, things like that. And that's something what Facebook does, and Facebook could learn from Google on these things, not have like this hidden policies, but basically make it clear, hey, if you do things, then we're gonna do this. Clearly lay out the law. Clearly lay out, not the law, but the policy. Okay, hope that helps. Let's jump into the next one. Now, there is a good advice from Google's John Mueller on when you should move your blogs to a subdomain or anything. Overall, this is a topic, it keeps coming up, and people always ask, hey, do I move my blogs to a subdomain? Say, in our case, our website is marketandgrow.com, and our blogs could either be marketandgrow.com/blogs, or it could go to blog.marketandgrow.com, right? Which one is right? What should you do? So basically what John brings it down to is like, hey, first of all, decide why you want this. Do you have content that can stand on its own and it's going to help you, or is this going to be just an add-on? Like for us, it definitely makes sense that marketandgrow.com/blog, so that way when it gets indexed, it's easier to index, things like that. There are also technical aspects to it, which is basically comes down to technical SEO, right? You need to have that blog.marketandgrow.com domain or the subdomain added to the search console and do all sorts of stuff. So for us, it makes sense, but all it comes down to is, do you want the first and big question is like, do you want the content to stand on your own, or do you want the content to be part of a, complementary to your main website, right? Then I already talked about your technical aspect. The last thing you need to be is like, it will affect the ranking of the new content, but it all comes down to is what you're planning to do. The other thing you want to do, I want to point out that John Mueller hasn't, is like, what happens when someone comes to marketandgrow.com in our example and jumps to blog.marketandgrow.com, and from there they jump back, right? They're going to jump back and forth, and it happens, right? So obviously, there's a way around it. With Google Analytics, you could just do, you can manage that, but it just gets complicated. So unless you have a very strong, compelling reason why you should put your blog on a subdomain, I would say don't. But if you want your blog to be hosted externally, like for example, our Tweem Show is now hosted on Substack. So at some point, I'm going to take it out of our website and just put it to tweemshow.substack.com. And guess what? It's gonna be, but it's a show, it's a thing that will stand on its own, and we are fine. If people were to cross over, we would say it's coming from in that place. But at this point, I don't. That's the only example I can share with you why you would probably move something to a subdomain. And even if it goes away, the traffic goes away, it doesn't really hurt us much. It's just that it's standalone on its own. Next up is Gary Illis from Google during Google Search Central Live in Singapore shared that 60% of the world's content is duplicate. I mean, I know that's a big number. And Google also shared this year in February that 15% of the search queries are queries that they have never seen before. So where this is all leading into is obviously you need to create unique content. However, also what this means is, and Gary had a couple of tips for you all. Number one is the way Google find duplicates is like, Google removes all the, stuff that is not essential and then takes the main content. So my guess is like, and I wasn't in the search central live in Singapore. I read it and I'm bringing it to you. So I want you to know that. But what Gary is saying that, look, what we do is we strip off all the unnecessary stuff, take the main content, and we do what's called a checksum. Checksum is a computer technology, is an IT term, which basically takes, like, they create a hash. So they take the content, and there is a program called checksum, or in the computer programming world, I've used it personally, and I'm trying to explain to you what it does is it takes the content and it creates a hash, and that hash is very unique. And the only way to content, even if you move a single letter, single space, single word, anything, not even a word, a letter or a space or a comma, it's going to change the hash. So Gary is saying, like, look, we do a checksum comparison and see if both the content comes to the same checksum. We're going to mark it as duplicate, and in the case of a duplicate, what we prefer is we always prefer HTTPS over HTTP. So if your website is not using HTTPS, then you will probably lose to, you are at a disadvantage. Now, you could associate who in the world would use HTTP in 2022. A lot of people do. A lot of people don't pay attention. They just use HTTP instead of HTTPS. Okay. Lastly, this kind of tells you that you need to continue to focus on producing something unique and useful. Then what's most out of the internet, even add your own expertise and things like that. And this is a nice segue into the next update of this week is, Google's vice president of Google Search, who's been with Google for over 20 years and has been working on search quality and core ranking with Google, whose name is Hong Jin Kim, has reiterated and reconfirmed that Google uses EAT in every single query. Now, what is EAT? This has been covered, and I'll quickly go over it. It's expertise, authority, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, right? Google applies EAT. This is their overarching algorithm that they uses for everything. So you see how it kind of ties up into, and I didn't make all this up, but it's just saying, how this ties up with what Gary said in Singapore and what Hong Jin Kim, the VP at Google Search, is saying. It's like, they apply EAT to everything that they do before they show the results to a user. Okay, the transcript of what exactly he said is in the show notes, so you may want to check it out if you're really interested about what he said. But this is very important. What you need to walk away is make sure you are writing good quality content, good quality blogs. And with that, the last update of this week is that Google has published a guide to current and retired ranking systems. And this is very, very important. And of course, if you don't want to manage it, obviously that's where we come in. But what's saying is, like, there are a lot of ranking systems and updates that are happening. What's the difference between the systems and updates? So for example, RankBrain is one example of a system that is always operating in the background. So a system is something that is always operating in the background. On the other hand, an update is something that's just a one-time adjustment to ranking structure. Okay, so that's the key distinctions that you need to know. But at the same time, there is a lot of ranking systems that are currently operational, so like the BERT, which is short for bidirectional encoder representations from transformers. It allows Google to understand how combination of words can express different meanings and intent. Then there is crisis information system, deduplication system, which is something I kind of talked about in the second to last update from Gary Ellis in Singapore. Exact match domain system, freshness system, helpful content system, which is what uses in the EAT. There's MOM, local news system, neural matching, and the list goes on. So as you can see, there's a lot of systems that are running in the background, and of course there are like things that have been retired, and you don't want to do that. I'm going to put the link to the site where Google publishes this thing. But the other thing I want you to do is go through some of the stuff. There is like at least 10 of the systems that are currently in operational, in addition to the one-time updates that happens, and I kind of share with this podcast, this show once in a while, okay, as it comes along. With that, folks, that's it for this week in marketing. Hope you find this helpful. Signing off until next week. Take care. Bye-bye.